Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Donovan Forrest, and I am a doctoral student in human resource development at Drexel University, presenting smart leaders, developing bold frontline change makers. Over the last year, I've had the chance to work at a nonprofit organization, nonprofit organization that works in four different cities: Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Atlanta, Georgia, and Boston, Massachusetts. In this presentation, I am acting as if I were a learning and development specialist to, improve overall operations of the organization, to develop leaders, promising leaders, and ultimately create a succession plan. So this is Smart Leaders Developing Bold Frontline Change Makers. A little bit about the organization. I did mention that we were in four cities in Washington, D.C., Boston, Atlanta, and Philadelphia. We're an organization that services the entire family in economically disadvantaged neighborhoods. Those and this organization serves in a variety of different capacities in these neighborhoods. That could be early childhood programs, parenting workshops, family fun nights that have an ECE, early childhood education component. Well, the purpose of the organization is to support families in achieving upward mobility, maintaining a stable way of living when it comes to economics and socioeconomic status, and ultimately to promote education. So when we think about purpose meeting practice, right? So, like I mentioned, the mission is to promote healthy development of young children and families in under-resourced communities. This strategy is through the organization is whole family support through education, outreach, and community partnerships. So this is a program that I am presenting or introducing. It's a Smart Leaders program. And so what we aim to do is take high performing employees and develop their leadership competencies in emotional intelligence, strategic thinking, cultural responsiveness, effective communication, and change leadership. So this cohort aims to build the following core leadership competencies. It's very important that leaders have emotional intelligence. They know how they present themselves, and they know how to process other people's emotions, other people's feelings, and learn to listen and have those interpersonal skills that can develop trust. When you think about strategic thinking, that's systems level analysis, zooming out, looking from the balcony, making data informed decision making, not based off of just just more theoretical based thinking when it comes to making decisions. Cultural responsiveness, right? So DEI practices rooted in community needs, not necessarily just for the people that we serve, but also for the people within our organization. Effective communication, active listening, facilitation, and written clarity, and change leadership, right? That adaptability, innovation, and leading through uncertainty. Uncertainty could be pandemic, it could be recent legislation rollback from current administration. It could be anything that directly impacts the families we serve. And so when we learn by leading, we're going to look at real world growth opportunities. So it's very important that emerging leaders in this cohort are able to shadow site leaders. I know that in Philadelphia, we have four sites. We have our office site in the Sharswood neighborhood of North Philadelphia. We also have two PHA sites, so Philadelphia Housing Authority sites in North Philadelphia, zip code 19121. And we also have an elementary school that we work in the Frankfurt community of Philadelphia. And so these individuals will be able to lead outreach events. There will be monthly leadership workshops where we'll discuss what's going on, what we are doing well, what we can improve on, and just give feedback. And so rotational leadership responsibilities. So like very similar to how, residents in medical school or after they graduate from medical school are able to experience different aspects of leadership, we would promote that, our emerging leaders are able to sit on the operations team for maybe, 3 months, or sit on a outreach team for 3 months, or sit on in charge of programming for 3 months. And so they would also be given special projects and ability to spearhead that when it comes to budgeting, budget projections, and also be able to lead pilot initiatives that are data-based. And so we want to express how important relationships are, not just for the people that we serve, but within the leadership pipeline. So coaching, mentorship, and community is equally important. And when we think about mentors, right? We want to look at internal mentors and peer coaches, people that we can trust, people that we could talk to about our aspirations and ultimately receive that support, but from a peer perspective. We have external partners for site visits and cross training, getting feedback in real time from them, and coaching support from senior leadership, right? So senior leaders taking emerging leaders under their wing. It's really important that we kind of include that site that going from site to site, maybe every 3 months, to experience different aspects of leadership, and then in participation in community leadership coalitions. Suggesting that you are a part of a leadership coalition or a board or some type of decision making entity within the community outside of the organization. And so we think about this human resource development model, the 70-20-10 blueprint, and this is how we grow leaders. So when we think about the things that are most important, right? 70% of, what we want to invest in when it comes to our leaders is on-the-job training, right? Online simulations, virtual reality, scenario-based learning. Those are all things that can be developed through the partnership with learning and development specialists. You can use Thinkerific, where this model is from, but that's the most important thing. So on-site leadership duties, the projects, the day-to-day operational things that you're learning on the job. Also, it's important that 20% of your time at work goes towards developmental relationships. So that mentoring, that coaching, maybe even sharing what you know with your peers, but also building those relationships, right? Learning from your peers on an active, ongoing basis. And then 10% of that is formal training. So that's that monthly workshops, external professional development, investing part of your annual budget towards, going to PDs or going to conferences or participating in these conversations. That should be about 10% of your entire leadership development blueprint. And so when we think about who leads, right, thinking about the talent recognition, right, who are we looking at to be the next leader of our specific site, specific city, department, so forth. So we're looking at high potential frontline staff. Of course, those that have the credentials, those that seem to get the job done well, efficiently, those that may have certain degrees of autonomy. This is totally up to the organization, the team, to determine what kind of constitutes a high potential frontline staff. I would say that you want to have a mixture of traditional leadership signs such as credentials, certifications. Lived experience is definitely important, but you want to kind of lean towards the people that have the knowledge of the theory in addition to the practice. And so selection, you look at annual nominations and the interview process, right? Always having a mid-year evaluation, always consistently evaluating, getting a temp check of how certain employees are feeling, getting that feedback and then applying that feedback so that we can continuously grow the organization. And so quite literally staff from diverse sites and backgrounds, right? You don't just want to have a select group of people leading an organization. You want to have people from a variety of different backgrounds, lived experiences, so that they can bring their value to the organization. So when we think about leadership in action, right, what does leadership look like? So this is the executive level engagement, right? At the executive level. So you have your CEOs, your COOs, your CFOs, right? So that's when you have monthly engagement sessions with the senior directors, right, of the organization, right? We're having these conversations, talking about what's going right, any suggestions, maybe have a PD in there, and also include guest facilitation, right? Not just people in the organization, but have someone from outside the organization to give their fresh perspective, maybe on a monthly basis. And so then you want to have one-on-one check-ins with the executive director. You want the executive director to always have a pulse on what's going on in the organization, any feedback that they have. I think that within small organizations like this, the executive director actually having a relationship with people that are in emerging leadership programs would be equally as important as those already on the leadership team. When we think about does it work, right? Measuring impact and effectiveness. The one thing that we want to drill home is that there is of utmost importance to have pre and post program surveys, right? Particularly within the pilot study or the leadership pipeline program, right? You want to have participant feedback, right? You want to make sure that you're getting feedback not at the end, but along the entire process. Retention and promotion data. We want to look at the data, right? Exit interviews. We want to get that feedback on what's going right, what's going wrong, how can we improve, so that we don't make the same mistakes next year, and that we continuously grow the organization. We want qualitative reflection reports, right? What would you say about this program? What went well? What would you like to see? Those are all important, just as important as that quantitative data. And then internal performance scorecards, right? Giving that onus on the employee and the emerging leader. How do you think you're doing, right? How would you rate your communication? How would you rate your organization? How would you rate your, self-education? Like anything like that to kind of gauge how they feel about their performance. And then you can do the same thing on the leadership human resource development side. When we think about looking ahead, right? Succession planning. This is so important. And when it comes to growing the pipeline, right? So that you don't lose leaders. So when we think about succession planning, we're looking at the roles that are critical to the organization's competitiveness and continuity. Whose absence will greatly impact operations and ultimately the success of the organization. You want to identify the key talent early, and you want to invest in that key talent early to ensure continuity. When we think about the ultimate goal of preparing successors to seamlessly take over critical roles, right? So do we have someone that knows program operations, financial management, program development, fundraising, right? We don't just want one person to know all those things. We want to make sure that we are planning ahead, just in case, someone decides to move on to a different organization or somewhere else in their life. And so that requires annual internal talent review meetings, right? Succession planning for site level leadership and pipeline metrics tracked in the HR dashboard. There are a lot of different cost-effective dashboards that you can use, but those things are equally as important when you're planning, when you're developing key talent and seeing, who could take over these critical roles in the case of someone deciding to move on. And so in a hypothetical situation, this would be something that we would have achieved, right? Outcomes that matter. So since the launch of Smart Leaders Cohort in 2025, we would say that 75% of participants reported increased confidence in leadership capabilities. They felt invested in, their morale increased. 60% received promotions or expanded roles within 12 months. 85% indicated stronger collaboration with peers and senior leaders. And then we had that reflective journaling and peer feedback showed growth in strategic thinking and initiative taking. So we all collect this data collected through the post-program surveys, internal performance dashboards, and that ongoing qualitative and quantitative data analysis and collection. And so these are some of the sources that have grounded our practice. As you can see, we have a Society for Human Resource Development. We have the 70-20-10 rule for leadership development and quite a bit of other resources that ground our practice and show, how we could kind of bolster leadership development within the organization at Smart and also ensure proper succession planning.